Arjun Malhotra, a 42-year-old Indian commercial pilot based in Mumbai, spent more time crossing international borders than sleeping in his own home, unaware that his final journey would not end on a runway, but inside an investigation spanning 3 countries and one brutal murder that exposed everything he tried to hide. Arjun Malhotra's life appeared flawless from the outside. As a senior commercial pilot for a major international airline, he was admired for his discipline, calm confidence, and spotless safety record. Years of dedication had earned him respect in the aviation industry, and his uniform represented trust, authority, and success. Based in Mumbai, he lived in a modern high-rise apartment with his wife and young daughter, a life many considered ideal. His mornings were structured, his routines predictable, and his public image carefully maintained. Arjun's career required constant travel across continents. Long-haul flights to Europe and Southeast Asia were a regular part of his schedule. These journeys kept him away from home for days, sometimes weeks, but no one questioned it. His family accepted his absences as part of the profession, and colleagues saw him as reliable and focused. Frequent time zone changes and hotel stays had become normal, blurring the line between personal and professional life. Behind this controlled exterior, Arjun carried a quiet restlessness. The solitude of hotel rooms and anonymous cities offered him a sense of freedom he never spoke about. Each landing in a foreign country felt like a fresh start, a place where expectations did not follow him. Over time, this freedom began to reshape his mindset. He learned how easily identities could shift when no one was watching. The man who returned home was devoted and responsible, but the man who walked through international terminals felt untethered. That invisible divide, unnoticed by everyone around him, was the first step toward a life built on secrets, one flight at a time. During one of his routine international flights, Arjun's path crossed with Sofia Reyes, a flight attendant known for her professionalism and easy confidence. Their roles often placed them on the same long-haul routes, and familiarity grew naturally through shared schedules and repeated encounters in the controlled environment of the aircraft. At first, their connection stayed within professional boundaries, shaped by fatigue, time zone confusion, and the quiet isolation that came with constant travel. As weeks turned into months, their interactions extended beyond flights. Layovers in unfamiliar cities created moments of closeness, where the pressures of work briefly faded. Arjun presented himself as a man unburdened by family responsibilities, describing a past marriage that no longer existed. His stories were carefully crafted, simple enough to sound true, detailed enough to avoid suspicion. Sofia accepted them without question, believing she had met someone equally shaped by a life in transit. Soon, their relationship became a hidden routine. In Singapore, they shared quiet walks and rented apartments that felt temporary but comforting. In Bangkok, brief meetings were filled with promises of future stability. In European cities, Arjun adopted the role of a devoted partner, attentive and emotionally present. Each country allowed him to adjust his identity slightly, keeping his real life far away in India. The airline industry's constant movement made secrecy easy. Different crews, rotating schedules, and limited overlap protected the illusion. What Arjun did not realize was that maintaining multiple versions of himself required perfect control. Every new flight added another layer to the lie, turning what once felt like freedom into a growing risk he could no longer see clearly. As Arjun's secret relationship deepened, his double life grew more complex and dangerous. Each country he visited became a stage where he played a slightly different role, adjusting his personality to match the setting. In Spain, he acted settled and thoughtful, speaking of long-term plans and a desire to slow down. In Thailand, he appeared more spontaneous, hinting at marriage and a shared future. In Singapore, he focused on ambition, talking about relocating and starting fresh. None of these versions were entirely false, yet none were complete truths. Managing this web required careful planning. Arjun used separate phones, different email accounts, and strict routines to avoid overlap. Social media remained tightly controlled, with no personal photos and limited online presence. He memorized flight schedules and relied on time differences to keep stories from colliding. To him, the system felt efficient, almost professional, like managing complex air traffic from the cockpit. What he underestimated was the emotional weight of constant deception. The pressure of remembering details, dates, and promises began to affect his focus. Small inconsistencies appeared in his behavior, though he dismissed them as fatigue. The sense of control he once enjoyed slowly transformed into anxiety. Every notification, every unexpected change in schedule, felt like a threat. At the same time, Sofia became more invested, seeking clarity and stability. She trusted the future Arjun described, unaware that it depended entirely on silence and distance. The distance between his real life and fabricated ones was shrinking. One careless oversight, one shared piece of information, was enough to expose everything. The lie now spanned continents, and Arjun no longer controlled the skies of his own making. The unraveling began with a small, almost meaningless error. While staying in Singapore, Sofia received a notification from a courier service about a delayed package linked to Arjun's name. The address listed was unfamiliar and clearly residential, located in India. At first, she assumed it was a mistake. But curiosity replaced confusion, and the detail refused to leave her mind. That single address became the thread that pulled at everything she believed. Sofia began searching quietly. Airline newsletters, archived interviews, and public aviation records revealed more than Arjun ever intended. Photographs from years earlier showed him at family events, standing beside a woman he had never mentioned. Mentions of awards included references to a supportive spouse. Each discovery confirmed the same truth. Arjun was not free. He was not honest. The life he shared with her existed only in fragments and false promises. The realization brought a mix of shock and isolation. Sofia also uncovered traces of similar patterns in other countries, suggesting she was not the only one living inside a carefully constructed lie. The depth of the deception changed how she viewed every memory. Moments that once felt genuine now seemed calculated. Meanwhile, Arjun sensed a shift. Messages felt colder. Questions became more specific. He responded with vague reassurances, believing he could still regain control. But the balance was gone. Trust had already collapsed, replaced by silent awareness. What had started as a private secret now stood on the edge of exposure. The crack was no longer hidden. It widened with every unanswered doubt, pulling his two lives closer to a collision he could no longer prevent. The consequences of exposure began quietly, almost invisibly. An anonymous report reached the airline's internal security department, raising concerns about professional misconduct and false declarations. No names were mentioned at first, but the details were precise enough to trigger a review. Arjun noticed changes almost immediately. His flight schedules were adjusted without explanation, and routine evaluations became unusually thorough. Questions that once focused on performance now touched personal boundaries he had carefully protected. At the same time, Sofia faced the reality of betrayal alone. Far from home, she struggled with humiliation and disbelief. The life she thought she was building dissolved into uncertainty. She considered speaking openly but hesitated, unsure of the consequences. The airline world was tightly connected, and reputations could be destroyed as quickly as they were built. Silence felt safer, even as the truth weighed heavily. Arjun attempted to stabilize his collapsing world. He reduced communication, avoided emotional conversations, and focused on work as a shield. But the pressure followed him into the cockpit. Concentration became difficult, and small errors appeared in routine tasks. Colleagues sensed something was wrong, though no one spoke directly. Investigators quietly expanded their inquiry, cross-checking travel records and financial activity. Patterns emerged that were impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, rumors began circulating within professional circles, growing stronger with each delay in official explanation. Arjun realized the control he once mastered was slipping away. His marriage, career, and hidden relationships were now linked by the same fragile thread. The higher he flew, the closer he came to a public fall that would leave no space to hide. The final meeting took place during a short layover in Bangkok, chosen because it felt neutral and temporary, like so many moments in their relationship. Arjun believed he could still contain the damage by ending everything quietly. The city, crowded and anonymous, seemed like the right place for loose ends to disappear. He arrived carrying the weight of exposure, fear, and exhaustion, knowing that every option ahead threatened his carefully protected image. The hours leading up to that night were tense and unstable. Arjun's career was under silent review. His marriage rested on lies, and the truth was spreading beyond his control. The pressure distorted his judgment. What he once managed with precision now felt chaotic. The hotel room became a confined space where consequences could no longer be delayed. Control, which had defined him both in the cockpit and in life, slipped away completely. By morning, the situation had crossed a line that could never be reversed. Sofia was found dead under circumstances that immediately raised suspicion. The scene suggested violence, not accident, and investigators treated it as a homicide from the start. Arjun was already gone. His scheduled flight had departed hours earlier, carrying him out of the country before authorities could question him. Hotel records, timestamps, and surveillance footage quickly narrowed the focus. The timing of his departure appeared calculated, not coincidental. What Arjun may have believed was an escape only deepened suspicion. The private collapse of his double life had now turned into an international crime. The lie that began quietly in the skies ended violently on the ground, leaving no version of the truth untouched. News of the suspected homicide spread rapidly across international law enforcement networks. Authorities in Thailand issued alerts while sharing evidence with aviation security agencies and foreign investigators. Flight logs, passport records, and surveillance footage were examined in detail, forming a timeline that centered on Arjun's movements. His rapid departure after the incident placed him under immediate suspicion. What once protected him, his access to international travel, now worked against him. As the investigation expanded, details of Arjun's hidden life surfaced. Financial transactions showed unexplained expenses across multiple countries. Phone records revealed patterns of secrecy and manipulation. Investigators built a profile of a man who thrived on control and compartmentalization. Cooperation between countries accelerated the case, turning it into a rare example of a truly international manhunt driven by digital evidence. Back in India, Arjun attempted to resume his normal routine, but the world around him had already changed. Media outlets uncovered fragments of the investigation, and speculation filled the gaps. His arrest came swiftly and publicly, carried out by local authorities acting on international requests. The aviation community was stunned. Passengers and colleagues struggled to reconcile the image of a trusted pilot with the allegations now attached to his name. The impact extended beyond legal consequences. Arjun's family learned the truth through headlines and televised reports, forced into sudden public scrutiny. The airline suspended him indefinitely as investigators continued their work. The case transformed from a private betrayal into a global scandal. The man who once crossed borders with ease now found himself trapped by them, facing justice in a world that no longer believed his carefully constructed identities. International attention intensified as investigators closed in on Arjun's movements after the Bangkok incident. As the case moved toward trial, Arjun's carefully constructed defenses began to weaken. He maintained that the relationship was consensual and insisted the events in Bangkok were misunderstood, but investigators focused on patterns rather than claims. Digital timelines reconstructed his final movements with precision, showing planning, deletion of data, and deliberate silence after the incident. Experts described his behavior as controlled on the surface, yet driven by fear of exposure beneath it. The image of an accident did not align with the evidence left behind. Psychological assessments highlighted a long history of manipulation and compartmentalization. Arjun had treated relationships like flight routes, carefully scheduled and emotionally detached. The court examined how his double life created mounting pressure that eventually erupted. Financial trails showed attempts to secure quick exits and cover tracks. Each detail removed another layer of doubt. Public reaction remained intense. The aviation world reevaluated how much trust was placed in reputation alone. Discussions emerged about mental health, secrecy, and unchecked authority within elite professions. For Sofia, justice came too late, her life reduced to evidence in a global case file. Her family watched from afar as the truth unfolded piece by piece. In the end, Arjun's freedom of movement, once his greatest advantage, became the map of his downfall. The skies he loved could not hide the consequences waiting on the ground. His story became a cautionary tale about deception carried across borders and the danger of living multiple lives without accountability. The aircraft continued to fly, passengers unaware, but one pilot's legacy ended not in the air, but in silence, sealed by the truth he could no longer escape.